The Moses Code, the most powerful manifestation tool in the history of the world. James F. Twyman Hay House, Incorporated. To Linda, my first and greatest love, although you left this world, you are forever in our hearts. That may sound like a grandiose claim, an impressive statement one may write just to sell books or grab attention, but what if it's true? Is it possible that an ancient code exists, a magical formula used by one of the greatest leaders of all time but has been lost for thousands of years? Interestingly enough, many of us are already familiar with it and have read about the miracles that were realized through its first applications, some of the most amazing events in history, yet few people are aware of the code that activated those miraculous occurrences, and when it's applied, it can attract everything our hearts have ever desired. Why it was hidden and left unused for so long is one of the great mysteries of the ages. However, for the first time the Moses Code is being shared with everyone, not just a select group of high initiates. In this book, I'll show you how to use the code to change your life and even the world. The wondrous events recorded in the Bible were a result of this process, and now you can harness its power to create miracles in your own life. You can use it to attract everything you've ever longed for: wealth, the perfect relationship, property, and so on. But the more you experience the Moses Code, the more you'll realize that it's meant for something much greater, to inspire peace and create a world built on compassion and love. I first became aware of the Moses Code when I was writing my most recent book, The Art of Spiritual Peacemaking. Clues and hints rose to the surface as I wrote, almost as if the secrets hidden from sight wanted to breathe fresh air again, or perhaps humanity was simply ready to see in a way that it wasn't ready to before. When I realized what I was looking at, I knew I had to conduct an experiment to discover for myself whether or not the code was real. When I was working on my previous book, references to the name of God I Am repeatedly came up. I sensed the power in the name, but I hadn't yet connected it to the law of attraction. It was only as I began studying and applying the name when it became apparent to me, as the subtitle of this book suggests, it really is the most powerful manifestation tool in history. Up to that point, I'd written 9 books, and only one of them had ever made it to the New York Times bestsellers list. The Proposing Tree debuted at number 25 and remained in that position for a week. I'm saying this just to show you that I'm not an author who's enjoyed an enormous level of success. My first book, Emissary of Light, sold very well over the course of many years, but even it didn't crack a single bestseller list. This being said, I knew I'd found the perfect test. I decided that I would use the Moses Code to help make The Art of Spiritual Peacemaking the #1 best-selling book in the world on the day it was released. This would require a miracle, and these were ideal conditions for my experiment. For several months, I applied everything I learned about the code. When I woke up in the morning, I meditated with it. I even printed a dozen or so copies of the book's cover so that I could practice the exercise throughout the day, pausing for a few seconds and meditating upon my goal whenever I saw a cover posted on the walls in the kitchen, bedroom, and everywhere else in my house. I could feel the energy building, and new ideas were streaming into my mind about how I could realize my vision of it being the best-selling book in the world. The day finally arrived when my book would be released. I logged on to Amazon.com and looked at its current place. The day before, it was ranked somewhere around 10,000, but early that morning on June 6, 2006, it had reached 300. It seemed that it was on its way up. By noon the book was in the top 20, and at 3 o'clock it sat at the number 3 position. Only 2 more clicks to go, I thought. By 5 p.m. it was at number 2, almost there. It sat at the number 2 position for hours. It was excruciating. I checked the ranking every hour, but it didn't move. I even rationalized that the title currently in first place was a softcover book, which meant that mine was the best-selling hardcover book in the world, but I knew it wasn't enough. When I used the Moses Code, I envisioned it being at the top, and I wasn't going to compromise. It was going to get there. I just had to have faith. At 9 o'clock, I took another look. Number 1. I'd like to say that I was surprised, but by then I knew it was real. The Moses Code isn't something I made up or even discovered in many ways. It discovered me. Recently, there's been so much talk about the law of attraction and how we can use it to realize our dreams, which usually means asking, how can I attract all the things I don't currently possess that will make me happy once I do? I'm willing to admit that this is an important first step, but I felt that the Moses Code offered something that wasn't immediately present in this formula. In other words, is satisfying the hunger of the ego the real goal, or is there something else within us, something far more significant, that's fulfilled in a very different manner? The Moses Code is about the next, and much more vital, step. How do we satisfy the longing of our soul? The story of my book becoming a #1 bestseller on the day it was released is a great example of how we can use the code to benefit our lives. But is this as far as we're asked to go? Have we been given these sacred tools to simply manipulate reality for our own gain, or are we being called to something higher, a purpose that matches the original intent for the reason why this gift was offered to humanity in the first place? Although I'll discuss the differences between the longing of the soul and the hunger of the ego later in the book, it may be helpful to say a few words here to prime the pump. The ego is constantly concerned with trying to get what it believes it doesn't have, while the soul seeks to give everything it needs, thereby realizing that those things were already present within. The Moses Code. This is the focus of the Moses Code, just as it is the highest goal of the law of attraction. The code was first used to secure the freedom of the Israelites who were enslaved in Egypt. Now it can be used to free you from the bondage of your ego. After all, where you live means very little if your mind and soul are oppressed. The purpose of this book is to offer you the most powerful tool in the history of the world for achieving true freedom. What is true freedom? Exactly, it's simply the ability to express your divinity in every situation, in every moment, and realize that you're the creator of the universe you experience. The ego seeks to enslave while your soul, like Moses, wishes to set you free. Let me give you one more example of the power contained in this process. I'm writing these words while sitting in a small cafe near my home in Talent, Oregon, immersing myself in the ideas and energy of the Moses Code. A few moments ago, I spent some time using the code to accomplish a particular goal, which was to sell a house I own. I took a few deep breaths, felt the energy of the words I chanted quietly to myself, and then let it go. Even though I spent no more than a few seconds focused in this way, I somehow knew it would have a profound effect. It is almost 4 p.m. on Saturday, nearly closing time for the cafe. There are only 2 other people in the room, a middle-aged couple seated at a table about feet away from me, talking in low voices while looking at a newspaper. I feel the urge to glance over and pay attention to their conversation. Apparently, they're from Minnesota and are getting ready to relocate for a job at Southern Oregon University. I noticed that they're checking out the real estate section of the paper and discussing current listings of available houses and townhomes. This is interesting, yes, but it isn't enough for me to lose focus. After all, I'm attempting to write while I'm here. My manuscript is due to my publisher Hay House in 2 days, and there is still some more work to be done. I turn back to the computer in front of me and type in the words Moses Code. The instant they appear on the screen, I feel something tug at my heart. Tell them about the house you've been wanting to sell. The house in question is currently being rented, and although I'd thought about putting it on the market, I still haven't taken action. Despite this inner urging, I feel like it would be rude to interrupt or even begin a conversation with the couple since they're so clearly preoccupied. But the feeling is persistent and increases until I finally say hello. No more than 15 minutes later, we made a deal contingent on them loving the house I had to offer. I knew they would since it was exactly what they were looking for and could be sold for exactly the amount they had in mind. The Moses Code is indeed the most powerful manifestation tool in the history of the world. Sometimes even I need to be reminded. Part I. The Law of Attraction. A lot has been said about the Law of Attraction in recent years. People everywhere are beginning to realize that they have the power to attract everything they desire. Actually, it would be more accurate to say that they're starting to understand that they've always had this ability. The law of attraction isn't something that we practice some of the time. There's no way to avoid living by this divine principle. This book will provide you with an ancient technique that has existed in the world for more than 3,500 years but was hidden away long ago because authorities decided it was too powerful to be arbitrarily wielded. They were probably right. Whether we are spiritually mature enough to do so now remains to be seen. But one thing I'm confident of is that we don't have much of a choice. The world is sitting on a critical precipice, and the decisions we make about how we will or won't implement this wisdom may mean the difference between evolving to the next level of achievement or complete destruction. The choice, it seems, is ours. This may not be the most important book in history, but I believe that the principles and techniques presented within it are crucial. When the Moses Code was first revealed to the Israelites, some of the greatest miracles in history were performed. Shortly afterward, influential leaders decreed that the inherent energy was simply too vast and potentially dangerous to be used by anyone other than the highest initiates. Our collective religious history is littered with legends and stories of spiritual masters who evolved to the point where they not only understood the Moses Code but were also able to practice it and achieve extraordinary results. Chief among the practitioners was Jesus of Nazareth. It's now time for all of us to master the code as well, not just to add riches to our lives, but to create a world based upon the laws of compassion and peace. If we continue to use this remarkable tool simply for our own gain, then we'll be lost. The law of attraction. This may sound ominous, and that is, indeed, the intention. You're being offered the most powerful tool in history for creating your reality. This isn't a new age fairy tale. It's real and true. We need enlightened souls to finally manifest the world of our dreams. It's easy to look at the earth and see the devastation of unconscious manifestation. Our planet didn't arrive at the brink of such terror on its own but through our collective decisions. The question now is simply, will we choose this again, or will we finally and resolutely decide to follow the call of the soul rather than the pandering of the ego? Whatever we genuinely feel, the world and everything in it will transform in order to match that belief. You have an essential and individual role to play, and that's why this book has found you. Part I of the Moses Code discusses the story of Moses and the basic spiritual makeup of the code. Then the tone changes dramatically, emphasizing once again the importance of your choice to create and consciously evolve. For now, relax and enjoy. You're about to go on a journey that will change your life. Chapter 1, A Story for the Ages. You've probably heard the story of Moses leading the Israelites out of Egypt, an astounding accomplishment that began with him standing before a burning bush listening to the voice of God. But have we ever really heard the deeper message being communicated, not only to Moses but to each one of us? Is it possible that a code is hidden within a story, a secret that gives us the ability to attract everything we desire into our lives? Could this be the most powerful gift God has ever bestowed upon the world? What are some of the things you most want to attract? Do you wish for abundance, your soulmate, the perfect house, or your dream car? Did Moses receive this cryptic message from God? And did God intend for us to also uncover the key to realizing all our dreams, easily and automatically, drawing into our lives everything we've ever asked for? If so, is it possible for you to use this same secret today and for the rest of your life, achieving what the rest of the world would call miraculous? Welcome to the Moses Code. Let's begin by revisiting the story, setting the context for us to finally comprehend the most spectacular secret ever concealed from humanity. We're told that Moses was born an Israelite slave in Egypt, but due to either profound luck or divine intervention, he was raised a prince among his oppressors. According to a law set forth by the Pharaoh, every male child born to Israelite slaves was to be drowned in the Nile. Jochebed, the wife of Amram, a Levite, gave birth to a son and kept him hidden for 3 months. However, when she realized that he'd soon be discovered and killed, She set her infant son adrift on the Nile in a small craft made from bulrushes coated in pitch. A short distance down the river, the Pharaoh's daughter found the baby and adopted him as her son. She named him Moses, meaning to draw out. Here's an interesting side note to our story. Moses' sister Miriam watched the boat as it floated along the Nile toward the city, then to the royal palace. When she saw the Pharaoh's daughter rescue the child, Miriam approached her and asked if she'd like an Israelite woman to nurse the infant. She suggested Jochebed, Moses' real mother, and she raised him to be the adopted grandson of the Pharaoh. From the beginning, Moses had his feet in two separate worlds and had two distinct mothers with very different dreams. The story continues when Moses is a man, a brave leader of the Egyptian empire, but one day, something happens that forever changes his life. Moses is among the slaves when he sees an Egyptian soldier mistreating an Israelite man. Outraged at this abuse, Moses kills the soldier and hides the body in the sand, hoping no one will ever discover his crime. However, he soon learns that a secret has spread throughout the ranks of the slaves. Fearing that his grandfather, the Pharaoh, will be informed of his deed and have him put to death, Moses escapes to the Sinai Peninsula and finds refuge with Jethro, a priest from Midian. Moses ultimately marries Jethro's daughter Zipporah, and he stays there with them for 40 years. The Moses Code. Now we've arrived at the pivotal moment when the great mystery of creation was revealed to humanity, only to be hidden away upon the first demonstration of its enormous power. It was one of the very first conversations with God, a conversation that changed the world. The time has finally come for each one of us to experience and embrace it. One day as he was leading his flock up Mount Horeb, Moses saw a bush that burned with a bright fire, yet the fire didn't consume it. He turned to look at the marvelous sight, and God spoke to him. What did God say to Moses? These words have been shared and loved by billions of people throughout the world for almost 3,500 years. Did anyone realize that this was one of the greatest gifts God had ever given to humanity? For the secret to creating miracles was revealed. Very soon you'll be among the first to understand the Moses Code and apply this amazing technique in your own life, but only if you choose to embrace it yourself. Let's examine some of the passages from the book of Exodus that describe this conversation with God. It begins by saying, God called to him from the bush and said, Moses, Moses, and Moses said, Here I am. Acts 3:4. Pay close attention to Moses' reaction upon hearing God's voice streaming from the fiery bush. He doesn't run away in fear. He also doesn't fall to the ground, saying, Why are you speaking to me? Don't you know I'm not worthy of this? Instead, Moses turns toward the bush and says, Here I am. This may seem like an innocuous response, but if we look a little deeper, we realize that it's far more significant. However, it's impossible to understand the impact of his statement until we continue a little further in our conversation. Hearing Moses' response, it's almost as if God is pleased. God then says to him, Do not draw away. Take your shoes from your feet, for the place where you stand is holy ground. Acts 3:5. Why is this place holy? The obvious answer is because it's the spot where God has become manifest and known in the world. God's presence is being experienced through an ordinary bush on a mountainous ridge, and the fact that this very same bush is burning with a fire that doesn't consume it is certainly miraculous. It makes this ordinary moment quite extraordinary. The Moses Code. But is there another possibility for why this ground is so holy? God clearly understands God. This is something we can all agree upon since God is omnipotent and omnipresent. Therefore, if God knows itself to be in all places at all times, would the Creator single out one place above all others as holy just because God's presence is being experienced there by one particular man? Is it not the will of God to be seen and felt in all places and in each person? From God's perspective, all places are holy because God is everywhere. This means that the Creator is unlikely to identify one physical location as more blessed than another. We may do this, but God wouldn't, because it would be the same as limiting what's limitless. The greatest difficulty of our humanness is that we are unable to view or experience God in all places at all times. Our minds simply can't conceive anything so vast. But does the divine also share this limitation? If so, then God would be as restricted as we are, unable to know itself as itself. Is it possible that when God asked Moses to take off his shoes, God was speaking much more intimately than we first guessed? Moses said to God, "Here I am." It's almost as if God smiles at him and says, "Ah, well said, Moses, indeed, here I am. This ground is holy because it's the spot where you have known yourself to be who you are." You may be thinking, wait a minute, are you saying that God was pleased because Moses seemed to recognize himself as one with his Creator? The answer is yes. For thousands of years, we've been sold a lie, and this has led to the suppression and dismissal of the Moses Code throughout the world. We've been told that we are weak and vulnerable, unable to do little more than eke out a meager existence on earth. If we're lucky, we're able to accumulate a relative degree of comfort, maybe even own a few houses and build a big bank account, but none of that will really ever satisfy us. Our purpose is to liven and die, hopefully with a few moments of joy in between. We've imagined ourselves in a prison from which we can never escape, and we've convinced ourselves that this is our real home. But what if the door to that prison cell was never locked? What if the world we live in is nothing more than a projection of our thoughts about ourselves, and God has never shared that vision at all? If God is all-powerful, all-knowing, and fully present in every moment, is it possible that the Creator would rejoice when we realize the truth? Hold on before you answer. Your response will determine your entire experience of life and how willing you are to accept everything that God intends for you. Your answer will determine how open you are to receiving miracles, and ultimately, cracking the Moses Code. Let's continue with the conversation between Moses and God. God says to him, "I am come down to deliver them, Israelites, out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them out of that land unto a good land flowing with milk and honey." Acts 3:8. God is making a great promise to Moses, granting the Israelites a passage out of Egypt and into a new home where they'll be abundant and free to live as they please once again. Let's look to the nature of God and decide if the rest of us are included in this promise. If God is in all places at all times, then this could be more than a historical decree that was made to one particular individual or group to the exclusion of the rest. Is it possible that God's vow is made to every person who listens, meaning it's being made to you right now? If you're willing to listen and believe, then you'll discover, just as Moses did, that God never breaks a promise to anyone. If this is true, you're being led to the same land flowing with milk and honey. In other words, the place where your dreams become reality. God is telling Moses that he'll lead the Israelites out of bondage into the promised land. In this place, we're told, Moses and his followers will have everything they need, and nothing will be denied them. Why? Because they are the chosen children of the Creator, worthy of all goodness and blessings. Most generations believed that this was a gift reserved for specific people, the Israelites, and according to this belief, God favors one group over another and is therefore willing to offer the chosen ones something that the rest can't receive. But is this really true? God says, "I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians and into the land of the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites." In other words, there are lots of other groups already there. Perhaps these people never left the promised land, or they were able to use the code to arrive there earlier. All we know for sure is that God's will is for them to be free, and this can't be reserved for a single group of individuals. Freedom is meant for everyone, as is the land overflowing with abundance. In the end, Moses is really no different from any of us. Faced with such an extraordinary gift, most would fall into the ego pattern that has ruled our lives for so long. Fear. The Moses Code. Your ego, otherwise known as the part of you that perceives itself to be separate from God and everything else, believes that you don't deserve anything, especially not the fulfillment of your greatest dreams. A well-known acronym for the ego is edging God out. How can we edge out the creative force of the entire universe and still have what our soul most longs for? The ego forces us to fall backward and play it safe and never comprehend the infinite potential that lies within. Like Moses, we say to God, "Who am I, that I should go unto Pharaoh, and that I should bring the children of Israel out of Egypt?" Acts 3:11. God may have replied, "Who are you not to bring them out?" We usually wait for someone else to get the job done, never realizing that there really is no one else. God is choosing you in this moment to receive everything you desire. When you do so, you'll be a living example of the great secret that will make you rich beyond your wildest imagination. And now we come to the critical question and answer that the entire Moses Code is based upon. God has given Moses a task, one that seems impossible. In fact, God even tells Moses that the Pharaoh will never listen to him or consider honoring his demand, which doesn't seem to surprise Moses. After all, the Israelites were responsible for building half of Egypt. Without their forced labor, the Pharaoh wouldn't be able to construct his vast temples or modern cities. In short, without Moses' people, the Pharaoh would be lost, and he wouldn't take this loss lightly. Moses needed something more, something to tell the Pharaoh and his own people that would convince them that this was the will of the one God. And Moses said unto God, "When I come unto the children of Israel and say to them, The God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they say to me, What is his name? What shall I say to them?" Acts 3:13. A name has great power. It not only identifies people and separates them from others, but in many cultures, it defines who they are. That is, a name bears the essence of the individual. When Moses asks what name to give his people so that they may believe he's telling the truth, it's a very big request. It must be a name that incites passion and dedication. It also must be worthy of the Creator of all things, the single source of life in the entire universe. What kind of name can encompass the power and majesty of such a being, as well as contain the magic and mystery that God deserves? The Moses Code. And God said to Moses, "I am that I am. This is what you will say to the children of Israel. I am has sent me to you." Acts 3:14. I am have sent him? Remember that this is what Moses said to God when he was first called to the burning bush. "Here I am," or in some translations, "Here am I." Whether or not Moses realized it, he'd identified the power of God with his own, and God was pleased. In fact, when Moses shared this name with the Israelites and then the Pharaoh, miracles began to take place all around them, one after another. The world began to conform to the idea that Moses held in his mind. The Israelites should be freed from Egypt. In the end, the force of this demand, backed by the name of God, was undeniable, and the Pharaoh had no choice but to concede. God's children were allowed to leave and seek the promised land where all their dreams would come true. But here's the question we now need to answer. Having witnessed the supreme power given to them by God through this name, why did the Israelites hide it away, rarely to be used again? For centuries and even millennia, many people have believed that humans should never utter the name given to Moses. It was unspeakable, and so the magic contained within it was concealed from the world. A story for the ages until now. You're going to learn how to unlock the Moses Code. In doing so, you'll attain everything you've ever desired. Do you believe this is possible? Will you be like Moses and ask for more proof? If it's evidence you need, I'm all too ready to give it to you. About the author. James F. Twyman is the best-selling author of 10 books, including Emissary of Light and The Art of Spiritual Peacemaking. He's also an internationally renowned peace troubadour who has the reputation for drawing millions of people together in prayer to positively influence crises throughout the world. He has been invited by leaders of countries such as Iraq, Northern Ireland, South Africa, Bosnia, Croatia, and Serbia to perform the peace concert, often while conflicts raged in those areas, and he has performed at the United Nations, the Pentagon, and more. James is also the executive producer and co-writer of the feature film Indigo, and the director of the Indigo Evolution and the documentary The Moses Code. The Moses Code. For more information on the Moses Code, including internet courses, workshops, and teleconference calls with James, please visit www.themasas.com or www.chamastweeman.com.